There was a chapter of Egyptian history that was deliberately erased. Carved out of temple walls, chiseled off monument faces, removed from official records with such thoroughness that for centuries the modern world had almost no idea it had ever happened. But it did happen. For nearly a century, Egypt, the most powerful civilization on Earth, was ruled by African kings from the south. Kings who built more pyramids than any pharaoh before them. Kings who restored Egypt's glory when Egypt itself had forgotten how. Kings who came not as conquerors, but as inheritors of a tradition older than Egypt itself. They came from a kingdom called Kush, and this is their story. Travel south along the Nile, past the pyramids of Giza, past Luxor and its temples, past the first cataract at Aswan, where the river narrows and churns white through ancient granite boulders. Keep going, past the second cataract, into a landscape that grows drier, hotter, more elemental. Where the Nile cuts through sandstone cliffs the color of burnt copper, and the desert presses close on both sides. This is Nubia. And this is where one of the most extraordinary civilizations in human history was quietly building itself for 3,000 years. Archaeological excavations at Questul uncovered objects dating to around 3300 BC, among them a stone incense burner decorated with images of a king wearing the white crown of Upper Egypt. This discovery was staggering. It suggested that the symbols and iconography of Egyptian kingship may not have originated in Egypt at all, but in Nubia, carried northward along the Nile. By around 2000 BC, the Egyptian state had grown powerful enough to push south and establish a colonial presence in Nubia, building a chain of massive mud brick forts along the Nile's second cataract. But then, around 1650 BC, Egypt's power collapsed. The Hyksos invaded and occupied Lower Egypt. The Egyptian state fractured, and in the power vacuum, Nubia began to consolidate. By around 1700 BC, a new Nubian kingdom had established itself with its capital at Kerma, a city whose remains reveal a sophisticated urban center. Kerma was not a primitive settlement in Egypt's shadow. It was a rival civilization. The wars between Egypt and Kush over the following centuries were brutal and sustained. Egypt eventually prevailed, pushing its frontier south past the Fourth Cataract and absorbing Nubia into its empire. For 4 centuries, Nubia was an Egyptian colony. The Nubian elite sent their sons to Egypt to be educated at the pharaoh's court, but culture flows both ways along a river. Because by the 8th century BC, Egypt had again collapsed, divided, weakened, ruled by squabbling local dynasties. Its pyramids were no longer being built. And from the south, from the kingdom that had grown powerful in the Nubian heartland, with its new capital at Napata, a king named Kashta looked north at what Egypt had become and decided to take it back. Around 750 BC, the Kushite king Kashta extended his control into Upper Egypt. His successor Piye completed the conquest. Piye's military campaign northward through Egypt is recorded on one of the most extraordinary documents to survive from the ancient world, a large granite stela discovered at Napata. What the stela reveals is remarkable. Piye did not see himself as a foreign conqueror. He saw himself as a restorer. He bathed in the Nile and presented himself at temples. He was more Egyptian in his devotion to Egyptian religious tradition than the Egyptians he was conquering. He swept northward. City after city submitted or fell. By the time Piye reached Memphis, the city's defenders barricaded themselves behind flooded irrigation channels. Piye attacked from the water, scaling the walls with his forces, and the city fell. Piye stood in the temple of Ptah. He entered the palace, and he became Pharaoh of Egypt. He and the 4 Kushite rulers who followed him, forming the 25th dynasty, ruled Egypt for nearly a century, from around 747 to 656 BC. Under their rule, Egypt experienced a genuine renaissance. Old temples were restored, ancient religious traditions were revived, the arts flourished. Most remarkably, they built pyramids. Egypt had stopped building pyramids nearly 1,000 years before the Kushite conquest. But the Kushite pharaohs looked at the pyramid form and saw in it the most powerful symbol of royal divine authority the ancient world had ever produced. They began building in their own style, steeper, narrower. In 671 BC, the Assyrian Empire invaded Egypt with iron weapons against which the Kushites' bronze could not compete. The Kushite pharaohs were pushed southward, back across the border, back into Nubia. But Kush did not end. It endured for another 1,000 years. Moving its capital southward to Meroe, Kush reinvented itself. Its iron smelting industry became one of the most productive in the ancient world. The Meroitic kingdom developed its own writing system, a script that modern scholars have decoded phonetically, but whose language remains only partially understood. Its queens, called Kandakes, held real political power, commanding armies and making state decisions. The Roman Emperor Augustus, who made the mistake of raiding Meroitic territory, found himself in a difficult negotiation with a Kandake named Amani-Renis, a warrior queen who reportedly led her armies into battle personally, despite having lost an eye in combat. She negotiated a peace treaty with Rome on equal terms.
Rome honors this bond, and Caesar agrees.
By around 350 AD, the Kingdom of Kush finally fell, conquered by the rising Kingdom of Aksum from the Ethiopian highlands. 3,000 years of continuous Nubian civilization came to an end. But the pyramids remained. Today, in the Sudanese desert near Napata and Meroe, more than 200 pyramids rise from the sand. More pyramids than exist in all of Egypt. Built by a civilization that most of the world has never heard of, erected by kings and queens whose names, Piye, Taharqa, Amani-Renis, Amani-Tore, are almost entirely absent from the popular histories. Stand among the Meroitic pyramids at dawn, and the light comes sideways across the desert, turning the sandstone a deep, burnt gold. Taharqa, the greatest of the Kushite pharaohs, is mentioned in the Bible. He's referenced in the Book of Kings, in Isaiah, in ancient Greek and Roman texts, and almost nobody knows his name. That is the true measure of how thoroughly Kush was erased from history, not by accident, not by time, but by intention. But the pyramids are still there, and the desert, it turns out, is a very good archivist. History keeps what empires try to bury. Subscribe for more and journey through Africa's past.